to Outliers and Outperformers, Women in Fund Management, with Melody Hobson of Ariel Investments, Ivka Callis-Bistricki of Pax World Funds, Luz Padilla of DoubleLine, and Mary Ellen Stenick of R.W. Baird & Company. Now I'd like to go on to a few questions about the mutual fund industry in general. How would you describe the culture in the fund industry as you were working your way up or clawing your way up and today? Mary Ellen, would you like to start?
Sure. Fortunately, having been employed by only 2 investment advisory organizations, I only personally have experienced on the inside two entities. And I will say at the First Star Funds and now with the Baird Funds, fortunately, they are complexes and companies that were built with the shareholder in mind. And so as the funds have been built from an investment strategy vantage point, as the funds have been priced, they have, and all of the business practices have put the shareholders' interests first, which is aligned really with how we manage the businesses overall. And so it's really been quite easy for me because our job, the hardest part, is living in that gray area where you need to make decisions all the time in terms of risk versus the alpha or the potential return you're taking on. And that's the only headwind. That's the challenge we've got. And it's admittedly a big one, day in and day out. But not worrying about, gee, who's on the other side of this trade? Or am I competing? How do I allocate my time? For example, we do not and never have and never will manage money, competing interest money for the firms we work for. If they want to invest with us, come on into the funds with us, where we're all eating the same cooking. So I've never felt that we had that tug of war ethically going on with how we go about managing these portfolios versus the firm's capital. Unfortunately, I think the industry has put itself in a position where there is a lot of question mark about where loyalty and where interests lie. And that saddens me a great deal because at the beginning and the end of the day, the business that we are in, it's a trust business. It's a confidence business. And it's a business of great responsibility. And every day I think about my mom's in these funds as a shareholder, my neighbors, I'm in there, my family's in there, that every single day that's a huge responsibility. And I have got to put those interests first and foremost, as does the entire portfolio team.
Would anyone else like to answer that question?
I thought I'd just throw in the fact that since we are talking about women in asset management, might as well raise the topic of the elephant in the room, which is that less than 10% of asset managers or portfolio managers are women. And I do think that the culture is too homogenous because of that. I mean, in my history, and I have worked for a number of asset management firms, until I came to Pax, where actually half of the PMs are women. I've always been the only PM on the teams where I've worked. And I can count on one hand the number of people of color I've actually worked with. So it's an incredibly homogenous business. I don't want to say, what that means, macho, risk-taking, we can talk about that later, but what it does mean is that there's a lack of diversity that people bring to the table that I don't think is healthy for the business. And I'm very much hoping that we'll see an evolution in asset management, just like we've seen in most other fields that were once male-dominated, and at some point in time something changed, and now they're at least 30, maybe 50% women, and I think that they're really much better for that, and I'm hoping to still be around when that actually happens in our business.
I was just going to add, and I totally agree with you, that when I started in the business, I was 22 years old, and I would describe the industry as being very white, very elite, very male, very exclusive. And I think that comes with enormous long-term challenges. And I contrast that, let me just back up. One way to make the point, put a fine point on it is, there are 9,000 mutual funds, which was mentioned. And in the newspaper, if you open up USA Today as an example, or the Wall Street Journal, there are about 500 mutual funds listed because of their size. We have about $3 billion in mutual fund assets. We were the only company in the newspaper that's black. It's 2010. So that gives you a sense of where the industry is. We're literally the only company. So the diversity issue is pretty dramatic. Now at the same time, I contrast that with the fact that I work at a very diverse firm. I'm a woman president of the firm. I'm a woman chair of the Mutual Fund Board of Trustees. And so I've seen the two sides of this coin in a way that's pretty enlightening. It helps me to really have a good sense of what does make for success over the long term. So for all the lack of diversity that continues to exist in the industry, the amount of diversity inside of my company, I believe, gives us the long-term edge. And so it's actually, in some ways, a competitive advantage for us when you think about all the potential customers out there, all the ways that people use products that you're trying to understand as an investor, all the potential investment opportunities that are out there. You want a whole group of different people around the table to make those decisions. And the way that someone explained it to me once is a very simple question that you ask yourself. When you're making big decisions that affect people's lives and their livelihood and their ability to send their kids to college or buy a home or start a business, is everyone in the room? And the great thing is when we look at who's in the room at Ariel, we can say, we got a lot of people in this room who come with a different point of view. And we actually embrace the idea that at Ariel, that conflict leads to a better decision. So if we sort of say to ourselves, if we're in a room and we are vehemently disagreeing with each other, we're going to have a better outcome. Because as you all know very well, when you are with people who are so like-minded, you go down a path of groupthink. And groupthink in investing is a very bad thing. So I have to say, industry-wide, there is one culture that I pray we can be a sign of what needs to change by hopefully delivering excellent results to our clients over the long term that will demonstrate this model is a better model. But at the same time, in my own company, it reinforces. And one last point about it. Now, if you watch television, it's very interesting to me that let's take a show like Grey's Anatomy. Grey's Anatomy has all different types of people on the show. So as a result of that, they pull in audiences that are black, Hispanic, Asian, white, men, women, perhaps more women, but still. So there's a whole cadre of people that watches the show. Versus I remember watching Oprah once. I was in a hotel room somewhere going to a meeting, and she was interviewing the cast of Friends, and she said, there are no black friends in New York. And so it sort of lets you know the world is in a different place. And the question is, are you willing to be a part of where the world is going or not? And to the extent you don't make that decision, you ultimately deal yourself a less, let's call it, rewarding hand.